on our web grants website as well as our state parks website for the Land and Water Fund. So that way, if you have any questions and you want to like pick it up and look back at it later, you have this option, or you can just contact me directly and I can help you however you may need. I did.
Oh.
Okay, there we go. So what exactly is the Land and Water Conservation Fund? This was the LWCF Act was established in 1964 to assist states and political subdivisions to plan, acquire, and develop outdoor recreational lands and waters in the United States. This is a federal pass-through program from the National Park Service that is administered by the Nevada Division of State Parks. We are designated by our governor, and every time we get a new governor, I guess, really, yeah. And so we have two basic pots of funding. We have in the sense where we have the ability to have stateside funds that go directly to us as the program state, and then funds that go toward, or sorry, I think I messed that up, didn't I?
No, I think you're good.
Okay. So we have funds that go to the state, as in state parks, and then what? No, go ahead.
I'll clarify. Sorry, this part might be a little confusing. The stateside funds go to all the states, which then get divided up between state parks and political subdivisions, and then the federal side funds are used for federal lands acquisition. That is only to be used by the federal agency, the National Park Service.
Sorry, we're just letting someone else in. There we go. There. Sure. So the goals of the LWCF program, to identify public outdoor recreation needs to strengthen the health and vitality of the American people. It is also intended to increase the number of protected state and local outdoor recreation resources to ensure availability for public use in perpetuity. That is the one thing you guys are going to learn about this grant is everything is in perpetuity. Yeah. And this also, the grant is also supposed to encourage sound planning and long-term partnerships to expand and ensure the quality and quantity of needed state and local outdoor recreation resources. So funds for the acquisition of lands and waters and the development of local parks, playgrounds, and recreational spaces are one of the main things that this program covers. And another important thing to know is that the funding for this program does not come from taxpayer dollars. It comes from the earnings from offshore oil and gas leases. So this is just a quick history of the amount of funding in the state of Nevada for the LWCF program since about 2002. So, and it only goes till last year. So it's about a 20-year span. As you can see, we have run the gamut from $1.6 million in the very beginning to much smaller pots of funding down to like $284,000 in 2008. And as of last year, we are up to $3.6 million. So it's all very dependent, but we try and utilize our funds as best as humanly possible to make sure that we can maximize our output.
And I just want to add that a part of the reason why the funding has been going up is because of the Great American Outdoors Act, which guaranteed a minimum of 40% going towards the program.
All right. And again, this is just a graph to show the level of funding over the past 23 years in the state. Program rules. There, as any federal funding source, you're going to have a lot of program rules that you have to abide by, and some places where you can find these rules. So the National Park Service has a federal financial assistance manual that helps govern the Land and Water Conservation Fund program that covers both what the requirements are for the state as well as for the subrecipients. So you can find a great amount of assistance in there. But if you're looking more for what examples and rules you need to follow as a grantee, you're more than likely going to want to follow the Nevada Land and Water Conservation Fund grant manual that is updated yearly whenever we post a new grant round. You can also find more information on the National Park Service's website for the Land and Water Conservation Fund, as well as our state park website. And as always, because again, this is federal funding, we are required to comply with 2 CFR 200 principles. And we'll get more into that a little bit later.
And I also just want to mention, if there are questions, feel free to ask as we present. And I'll, if you raise your hand, I'll keep an eye out for the little yellow hand and I'll call on you.
Yeah, thank you, because we have like 80 slides, so I'm trying to.
Some of them will, yeah, it's gonna go fast, but yeah, don't hesitate. If you have a
If
question,
you have questions, stop me.
yeah, stop us. And this is what we're here for. It's not just for us to give you the information. It's a complicated program, so just don't worry about interrupting us.
So what are some of the things that LWCF can pay for? Land acquisition. So with land acquisitions, you can buy frontage on water bodies for water-based recreation. You can buy the water body itself. You, excuse me. You can buy areas with special recreation opportunities, such as wetlands and areas adjacent to scenic highways. You can purchase natural areas, preserves, and scenic areas, and land within urban areas for use in recreation areas, so like playgrounds, picnic areas, sports facilities, things like that. Sorry. Acquisition of land and waters or interest therein may also be accomplished through the purchase or eminent domain or transfer or by gift. Acquisitions of temporary interests such as leases are not eligible for this grant funding. So as well as acquisitions of properties with reversionary interests are also not allowed. For acquisition projects, development must start within 3 years after the acquisition is completed, and acquisition can be by either fee simple title or by whatever lesser rights will ensure the desired public use for the project.
So I just want to also mention that the reason, leases and reversionary interests aren't allowed is because, like Elise mentioned, this has to be in perpetuity. And so those tend to be temporary use type deals. And so that's why if they're not eligible, if that's the case that you're working on.
So another thing that LWCF can pay for is development projects. And I feel like, at least in my brief experience with the program, this is the majority of what our projects are. So things that are eligible for development funding with LWCF: picnic facilities, trails, hunting and fishing facilities, boating facilities, camping, outdoor exhibit facilities, community gardens, although I will put the caveat in there, community gardens are kind of difficult to get through LWCF, but it is possible.
It's as long as it's in our score. Which
it is in our score.
So now it should be okay.
Yes. Beautification projects. Support for any of the facilities previously mentioned. So roads that assist access to the facilities, parking utilities, restrooms, cabins, visitor centers, kiosks, spectator seating, walkways, pavilions, lighting, rehabilitation. So like operations and maintenance facilities. We have an active project right now that is for a skate park down in Pahrump that is getting maintenance funding from us. And they've also put up protective fencing to reduce things like vandalism and stuff, as well as lighting to help keep the skate park open longer during the day. You can also pay for equipment to make a new recreation facility operational, and it also can pay for things that assist with energy conservation infrastructure.
Okay. Oh, I just wanted to also mention that the project that you do has to be a complete project. It can't just be like, we're going to put in the site utilities and that's the project. It can't be that. It has to result in a usable recreation area.
That's true. Thank you. That's a good point. And then we have the option to combine projects or do planning projects. So a combined project would be you purchase the land and then you continue on with the development until the park is, or the recreational facility is ready to open to the public. Other projects are, you can do a planning project, but it has to be part of an approved development project. Again, it can't just be the planning portion. You have to have a project that completes. So who is eligible for LWCF funding? Unfortunately, nonprofits and private entities are not eligible to apply, but they can partner with an eligible entity. Eligible entities for LWCF are political subdivision, including state entity, state agencies, cities, towns, governments, like tribal governments, counties, general improvement districts. Those kinds of entities are eligible for LWCF funding. So allowable costs. Allowable costs can be a really big deal for LWCF. So for development projects, allowable costs have to be items that are necessary for project preparation. And those costs can be done for either match or reimbursable. right? So you can use it as your match requirement or your reimbursement requirement. So it's up to you guys, or you can split it 50-50. So examples of allowable development costs include costs for site investigation and selection, planning and feasibility studies, preliminary design, environmental review, cost estimates, construction drawings and specifications. And then of course, you know, it can move into things like purchasing materials for the actual project itself. So like, say you're putting in a playground, you can purchase the playground equipment, or if you're gonna put in a restroom, you can purchase the restroom and do the installation and that kind of stuff with the development funds. For acquisition projects, you can have costs that are relating to the appraisals and surveys that are required for the acquisition. May be eligible, but there are specific requirements that have to be met before they can be considered eligible with the Park Service. Pre-award planning costs are eligible for inclusion in your allowable costs as long as they're completed within 3 years prior to the project submission, and they must be approved by the Park Service before they are considered allowable. So it's really important that you clearly identify those planning costs as your pre-award costs in your application so that we can make sure that they become eligible costs for you down the road.
So if you do want to try to use pre-award costs as a match, or get reimbursed, you make sure you start tracking them. And they have to be within 3 years. If it's 3.5 years, they're not eligible. So just make sure you document everything you're doing right now. So if you're planning it right now, that's gonna count.
Absolutely.
So just make sure that you start tracking that.
So ineligible costs, things you can't pay for with Land and Water Conservation Fund. So typical, I think, of most federal grant programs, you can't pay for food and beverages. You can't pay for local development of local or regional plans. Administrative or overhead costs. Construction costs incurred prior to project approval can't be done. You can't, and that means any cost related to the construction. Anytime you touch the ground, if it's before your approved funding agreement is in place, it's a non-eligible cost. There's nothing I can do, so please don't do it. Costs associated with the design and engineering of your project are not eligible for reimbursement, again, unless you get prior approval from the Park Service. So please remember that. We cannot pay for indoor facilities, unfortunately. That's a different program that you need to find a different funding source for. Acquisition costs for land acquisition above the appraised value of the land from that survey and appraisal that you'll have to get for those projects. Ceremonial or entertainment expenses are not allowable. Interest expenses, employee facilities, and lobbying is also not an eligible cost for this program. Okay, so that was a lot, and I feel like we're kind of a little ahead of schedule. Anybody have any questions at this point in time? Nope. Okay, so since we don't have any questions, we'll move on. So important policies and requirements for the program. So political subdivisions that apply have to have adequate control of the project sites that are going to be seeing construction, operation, and maintenance of the areas for the entire term required by the grant program and the project agreement, which again, this program requires that control in perpetuity. And that's going to be done through a deed restriction, which we'll talk about a little bit more later on. So please make sure that you have adequate control of your proposed project area. Control can be documented in several ways, including things by showing a fee simple title, showing proof of land ownership, showing proof of a lease, showing proof of a use agreement, or showing proof of an easement.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just realized the lead, so this is actually contradicting what we just said.
It is, yeah.
The lead wasn't allowed. So it has to be, there's something called the recreation and public purpose lease that it's typically comes from like the BLM, where if you work out that kind of arrangement, then that would be eligible. But then if that's the case, if you're looking to do something like that, then just work with us early on it so that we can make sure it gets approved.
And then if you're working on land that has a federal land manager, for example, you're going to need an approval letter from that federal land manager identifying that they have given you authority to make the proposed improvements that you're wanting to do with your project.
Not doing it.
Very good, there we go. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties today. It's almost Friday. Property that has been acquired, improved, or developed with LWCF assistance must be maintained and open and operated in perpetuity for public outdoor recreation. Again, if that doesn't happen, that will become a conversion, which we will go into more detail later, but it's something that we really, really want to try and avoid. The property has to be maintained in an attractive and inviting way for the public to use. It must maintain sanitation facilities in accordance with acceptable public health standards. They must be kept reasonably safe. And then other aspects of the property, so like buildings, roads, trails, and other elements must be kept in good repair throughout their reasonable lifetime. Facilities must be kept open for public use during reasonable hours and seasons as determined by the nature of the facility and its environment. So when you have land acquisition projects, part of the requirement to do a land acquisition, of course, is an appraisal. So appraisals have to be done according to the Uniform Appraisal Standards for Federal Land Acquisition, or Yellow Book guidelines. Appraisals and reviews are required to establish the purchase price for the reimbursement that the grant would handle. If the property is worth less than $25,000, a qualified appraiser can do a waiver valuation instead of doing a Yellow Book appraisal. An appraisal by a qualified appraiser, either MAI or equivalent, must be submitted with the grant application for acquisition projects. So now we're going to move on into cultural and environmental clearances. So again, because this is federal funding, these are requirements for the grant program. And if you've never dealt with federal funding before, I'm sure you're going to be like, why can't I just go out and do my project? I don't want to do any of this. This is annoying. This is making everything miserable because this is hard.
And time consuming.
And time consuming. Very, very time consuming. And I apologize for that. But unfortunately, this is required. So NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, is again required for projects with federal funding or projects that are occurring on federal land. The NEPA project, or the NEPA results, must assess the environmental, social, and economic effects of proposed actions prior to any decisions being made on whether or not the project can move forward. The NEPA process also allows the public to have the opportunity to review and comment on the reports and make recommendations that will be taken into review by the federal agency. The other portion of this is that is also required anytime there is projects on federal land or with federal funding is the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, and or also known as Section 106 to those of us in the know. So Section 106 requires federal agencies to determine the effects of their undertakings on historic properties. And NEPA also requires that you follow Section 106. So what does a historic property include? Most people think, oh, that must mean a building. In truth, that is correct. It is most of the time a building. However, historic properties also include prehistoric or historic districts, which can include historic sites that include buildings, structures, or objects, archaeological sites, paleontological sites that contain artifacts, records, and remains of past human occupation, as well as properties of traditional, religious, and cultural importance to tribes such as TCPs. So if you have if you go for LWCF funding, the Park Service used to have it to where you could do both your NEPA and your NHPA in conjunction after your federal award was approved. That is no longer the case. Before your federal award can even be submitted to the National Park Service, both NEPA and Section 106 has to now be completed. So if you apply for LWCF funding and you need assistance with this, please let me know. Moving on to our SCORP, our statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. This is something that every state has to prepare for to receive LWCF funding, and it has to be updated every 5 years. The state just updated ours this past year, so our new SCORP goes from 2022 to 2026. The SCORP is how you are going to be judged when we get to that process, that portion of the process for your application. So you really want to make sure that all of your applications align with the SCORP in at least one way, if not potentially multiple ways. right? So please make sure that you go and read the SCORP, and you can, once I put the slide deck up on the website, you can click on that link and it'll take you directly to the SCORP so you can see things. However, this is what, our SCORP looks like. So the SCORP is intended to identify the state's priorities, which develop the scoring process, and it identifies themes for outdoor recreation. So the SCORP, so this new SCORP has 3 themes. Theme number 1 is the sustainable outdoor recreation that will create and expand upon a sustainable outdoor recreation system. So the intention of this theme is to optimize and leverage funding to plan, develop, maintain, and staff outdoor recreation needs while balancing conservation and resource protection. Plan and develop projects that support a sustainable outdoor recreation system which protects natural and cultural resources and fosters sustainable outdoor recreation through conservation and stewardship. So that's theme number 1. Theme number 2 is about the community and economic vitality of the program. So the theme is intended to leverage the strength of outdoor recreation as a driver of community and economic vitality. So we want you to cultivate community vibrancy and economic vitality through healthy lands and waters that support sustainable outdoor recreation. We want you to promote and increase awareness of diverse outdoor recreation opportunities while protecting Nevada's natural and cultural resources. And we want you to expand opportunities for people with diverse backgrounds to interact with natural and cultural resources and to equitably share benefits of outdoor recreation. Our final theme for the SCORP is pathways to health and wellness. So we would want you to expand those pathways through outdoor recreation by leveraging investment in outdoor recreation projects that advance the health and wellness benefits of outdoor recreation. Ways that enhance the awareness of health and wellness benefits through education and outreach, creating safe and welcoming environments that enhance participation in and enjoyment of health and wellness, and improve access to recreation just for the simple benefit of its health and wellness. So, again, I'm moving quickly and I apologize. Part of that's probably because I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit nervous about this since it's my first time. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Okie dokie, seeing none. Cool. We're gonna move on to requirements for part of the submission for the application. One of the main requirements for your application is gonna be a boundary. I'm gonna need a boundary map for a variety of things. I'm gonna need a boundary map for your section 106 work. I'm gonna need a boundary map for your NEPA. I'm also gonna need a boundary map to put your application into the Park Service so that they can see where the proposed project is actually gonna go. And so they can get an idea of where that lands. So, some things that need to be found on the boundary map, and again, I'll help you with this if you have questions as you're going through the application process. You're gonna have to give me the official park and site name and the location of where the project is, both in your general community as well as the statewide location map, right? Eventually, I'll give you a project number if your application gets approved and we get it to the Park Service. The boundary map is gonna have to have sufficient detail for me and anyone at the Park Service to be able to legally identify the lands that are subject to LWCF provisions. So things like GPS coordinates, lat lawns, things like that. It's gonna have to identify all known outstanding rights and interests in the area held by others. It's also gonna have to identify the total acreage of the area that is being proposed for an LWCF project. And that's gonna be within the boundaries of the proposed project area. It's gonna have to have a north arrow, and it is eventually gonna have to have either the state liaison officer, who is Bob Mergel, our state administrator for parks, or the assistant state liaison officer signature, which is either Janice or myself. So examples, visual examples of what a good. Oops. So just skip it real quick. Okay, so this is what a good example of one of our most recent LWCF boundaries looks like. So as you can see here, the blue is our boundary. This is all of the proposed land that is encumbered with LWCF funding. So anything within this boundary has to follow LWCF rules, okay? And again, this is encumbered within perpetuity. It has my acreage. So there's 316 acres that are encumbered on this potential project. It shows easements that are currently in the project area. So we have an NV Energy easement right here that consists of 7.83 acres. It gives me a location information, so a TRS for your mapping. It also gives me APN because we're in downtown Las Vegas at this particular one. And then it also gives lots of information that this is for the state of Nevada. And it's for a land and water conservation project. It gives me the boundaries, what county it's in, all that fun stuff, plus our happy little north arrow, right?
And ideally, if we should have probably put the GPS coordinates on the corners.
Yeah, probably.
This is our own state park, but a lot of times, if that's not done, sometimes it's not quite clear where the boundary ends, and so that's the most accurate way to get to make sure that the boundary is represented accurately.
What? Sorry.
Okay.
This is another example of a finalized boundary map. Again, this is for Lions Park Pool, which is out in Mineral County. We just closed this project a couple of years ago. So again, you can see clearly what the boundary is for the LWCF project. You can see the acreage. You can see TRS information, which shows where it's located, acreage, signatures, north arrows, all that kind of good stuff. And then if we could go back to, there we go. So again, another thing that is required for LWCF that before the project is closed out, there's gonna have to be a deed restriction that encumbers the property. I will not process your reimbursement request, your final reimbursement request without a copy of an executed deed restriction, okay?
And this is something you probably need to work with your county commission on, or board of supervisors, or city council, and they'll approve something like this.
Okay, yeah.
And we can send examples. I've got the paperwork examples that if you need, we're happy to send it over.
Okay. So the next part of this, we're gonna discuss conversions. Conversions are not fun. So let's try and avoid conversions, shall we? So conversions occur when a property that was either acquired or developed with LWCF funding, remember inside that happy little boundary we just talked about, is converted to anything that is considered other than public outdoor recreation use. So those changes or conversions from recreational use will vary cost. And it is a financial cost because it is something we want to avoid. One of our most frequent questions with conversions, can we just pay back the LWCF awarded grant to get out of the conversion? Yeah. Not an allowable thing. Things that trigger conversions, termination of public access, unallowable indoor facilities that are put on the land that is encumbered with LWCF funding. Anything else within the park boundary that does not support outdoor recreation. Perfect examples of this are installation of new overhead power lines, or new cell towers, or utility boxes. All of that triggers a conversion, which then has to go through us in the National Park Service and takes a very, very, very long time.
So, and this is something you may want to discuss as you know, with your agencies as you start planning your projects, and make sure that the property you want to, you know, build your outdoor recreation facility on is gonna stay that way. And your city or county doesn't have any plans down the road to change it. Because if they do, then it's not gonna work out for this program.
So if a conversion happens, I don't know if we have that after.
Do you want to talk about examples?
Yeah, so these are some examples of current existing conversions that are not resolved yet.
Yeah, okay, so I'll go over these. This one is in Las Vegas, Bob Baskin Park. It's a cell tower that was installed in the park, which, you know, is not an outdoor recreation use. And so they actually, and the bathrooms are back open again, but at the time the bathrooms were closed. I believe it was T-Mobile was actually working out of those bathrooms, and they had porta potties next to them, and the bathrooms themselves were paid for with land and water. So this was definitely a conversion. We are still working with them to resolve this one.
Mm-hmm. But just know, in general, cell towers, conversion.
Yeah,
Don't do cell tower.
no, and this actually happens quite a bit because,
It does.
you know, it's viewed as a park is oftentimes viewed as, oh, it's just like an area that's not really that crowded and used as often as like other areas. So let's just put the cell tower there, and it's actually not allowed. But if, say, you have a park or you have a property with a cell tower on it already, and you want to add some like recreation amenities, that cell tower would have to be
Clearly identified.
identified on the boundary map,
Mhm.
and so that would not be included in the boundary.
Correct.
This one is in North Las Vegas, and we have been working with them on resolving this conversion for, it's probably 6 years,
17.
6 years, but this is the Harkey Park pool. When we went there, the Land and Water Conservation Fund paid for the pool. And when we went there, the pool was closed and there was no intention of reopening, so this was a conversion. The Big Bend of the Colorado, this is actually a state park. And if you look at the lower left portion of this boundary, there's a purple line here. That's a power line that was inadvertently installed across our park after the park was encumbered. And that was done, it was supposed to go around it, but they just thought, well, this is the shortest route, so they just put it over without realizing that wasn't allowed. So that caused a conversion in our own state park.
Yeah.
So similar situation at Kershaw Ryan State Park, overhead power line, and we still have to resolve that one also.
So again, avoiding conversions is in everybody's best interest. Because in order to resolve a conversion, the political subdivision has to substitute another property that is not already in use as a park. It must be of equal fair market value for the existing property, and appraisals or land valuation are required, and those are things that you will have to pay for. It must have a reasonably equivalent usefulness and location to replace the lost park usage. And approval is contingent on the proposal being in accord with the current scope. Again, we cannot stress this enough. Please avoid this at all possible, because we cannot resolve conversions with the Park Service.
It takes forever.
It
really
takes
does.
forever. I've been here 2 years and I haven't seen one resolved yet.
Well, I've been here 6 and I haven't, but,
Oh,
and I think our previous program manager in her, I don't know how long she was here, 8 years before.
Oh, she was here a long time.
I think she resolved 1.
Yeah.
But the reason they take so long is because sometimes it takes a while to identify a replacement property.
Mhm.
And that's part of why. And also the National Park Service is just very slow with their approval process.
Yes. So let's try and avoid this, shall we? So projects that have successfully been funded with LWCF that have improved everybody's outdoor recreational value. We have Roscoe Park Playground in Carson City. Look at this beautiful new park. The JC Inclusive Playground in Las Vegas. I've noticed in the past couple of years that I've been here that inclusive playgrounds, the move towards those have become increasingly popular with political subdivisions, and it's amazing to watch all of the use that comes from these playgrounds and how important it is.
And actually, Roscoe is inclusive also.
Is
There's
it?
exercise machines that are accessible to people in wheelchairs. And there's areas on the top parts of the playground area that you can get a wheelchair also.
So something we highly encourage, and that the Park Service is really encouraging of, if you have an existing park that you would like to make inclusive, make it ADA accessible, things like that. That's a really great project. Beattytown Park. I'm not sure what we did here in Beattytown Park.
There were some improvements to the main core of the area with, seating and a picnic area and some of the sidewalks. So
Thank you.
that ended up turning out nice.
This is more local to us. We installed restrooms. And did we do the park as well?
No, just
the restrooms. We installed restrooms at the North Sunridge Park in Indian Hills General Improvement District.
And this is actually a common type of project. You have a park without a restroom.
Mhm.
And so just putting the restroom in the park is eligible, and it actually makes it so much nicer.
It enhances the amenities and the usability of the park.
And picnic areas, garbage cans, all that kind of stuff, all those
Mhm.
sort of ancillary amenities.
Benches, interpretive, not interpretive signage, things like that about what the park, all of that's eligible. Miguel Rivera Skate Park in Reno. We've actually done quite a few skate parks, I've noticed in this program. So we've got Miguel Rivera in Reno. We have Ian Deutsch Memorial State Park in Pahrump, which is an active LWCF project where they're installing lighting and doing maintenance and rehabilitation to the actual skate park itself. So skate parks are a big thing in the area. Carson has a disc golf course for Ridge Disc Golf Park. It's a really cool course. Yeah, I would highly recommend
And
it.
this one was built on RP&P leased land from the BLM. So this is a good example of how that can be done.
And then the city of Henderson, we assisted, with their bird viewing preserve. I'm assuming with signage, interpretive signage and stuff like that around the preserve. So those are just some examples of existing or previous or existing projects, that we have been able to successfully fund. Again, I'm gonna hold off and ask any questions from anybody, because I know we're throwing a lot at you guys. Okay, we're gonna move into the application process now. So we typically only have one grant round a year. And it's gonna be dependent on our funding, but right now the 2023 grant round is open from January 20th to March 27th. All applications are going to be submitted via our web grants application, which is a beginning to end program that handles every aspect of the grant process. Once grants are submitted via web grants and the round closes on the 27th, then we at NDSP will be working to select an advisory committee through our open selection process to review and approve or deny applications. You can find more information about the OPSP process on our state parks website, which if you go to this link here, you should be able to get there. And we just want to remind everyone again that grantees must comply with all grant agreements and terms and conditions. So application pieces that are required, and again, all of this is available through web grants. We need to have the application and revision form and or the A&R form. I promise it's not as scary as it looks, but I promise you the formatting is gonna suck and I apologize for that. So just be prepared. The actual state parks application form, we need boundary maps, we need a budget, and we also need confirmation and proof that completion of both NEPA and section 106 has been completed before we can submit. This is a copy, or this is a visual of our web grants portal. For those of you, I think I see everybody on here, and I'm pretty sure all of you guys have at least gotten registered in web grants, but if you have not, it's a pretty quick and simple process. You just click here on the yellow button. You put in your information. It will send me a notification. I will go in, I will approve your registration, and then you'll be able to access the funding agreement or the funding announcement and be able to start your application. And then there's also on the announcements page, there's also new information that I update often. So because web grants is going to be your friend throughout the entire process of this grant, you're going to want to go back to the announcement page and get more information as it comes up. So your LWCF award agreement. Because of Title II, CFR 200, we were required to make updates to our existing land and water funding agreement. We made those updates back in 2022 last year. Some of those updates include changes to our grants, conditions and assurances, scope of work and deliverables, budget and financial reporting requirements, our single audit information requirements, current and former state employee disclaimers, and matching fund requirements. We have also included, because of Title II, a subrecipient risk questionnaire at the very beginning. This is also another piece of your application process. Again, it is a requirement for Title II because of 200.331 and 200.332. The subrecipient risk questionnaire allows us to gauge your financial abilities and make sure we are not, as a state, putting the state at risk for a potential bad grant. Another thing that has been updated is now we are required to have a SAM.gov registration. Please be aware this has to be renewed annually, and I will have to have proof that your renewal is completed annually. This is also where you will be getting your required unique identity information number. That was the DUNS number that was replaced in April of 2022 and went live at that time. If you had an existing DUNS number and you didn't go in and check it, It should have automatically updated to a UEI, and so you should just be able to log into sam.gov and get a copy of your UEI to put on your grant application. If not, you may have to go in through the registration process and start over, which can be time consuming. So if you don't have sam.gov and a UEI, I would recommend starting now. Other things to be able to apply for LWCF funding, you must have various registrations within the state. You have to be registered as a vendor with the state controller's office. That is a pretty quick turnaround. I think it's generally 10 business days or so. It can be done online or via mail. And if you click on the link right there, it will show you how to do that. You also have to be registered in Nevada ePro, again, a requirement in order to actually get reimbursed for this program. All reimbursements will be coming through EFT or electronic funds transfer. There are cases for direct deposit options with the controller's office, but they are rare. Almost everything I'm aware of goes through EFT. I don't know of any direct deposits. So, again, the ePro, my registration can be done online, and my understanding is that it's pretty quick. So just make sure you have those pieces and parts ready to go, because I will be asking for that information.
So this last part Elise mentioned is required once you get the award, not for the application. Is that correct? Or are you requiring it for the application?
I'm requiring it for the application more so than anything, just to make sure, because these, in case there's time lapses and stuff, I don't want it to be delayed.
Okay,
So I want to have everything ready to go. That way, as soon as we get a funding agreement and a notice of award, everybody can just move.
okay. So get it done before the application, so you're ready to go if you get awarded.
Mhm.
And I will say that they're going pretty fast.
They are going extremely fast.
They're, back on schedule.
Thank you. Yeah.
What they used to be.
Like everybody else, the state is experiencing,
That's true.
staff shortages. So, we are doing our best to get caught back up. Every office is doing its best to get caught back up. So, it is very nice to hear that the controller's office is moving forward.
It's
So,
very good.
yay! A new component to the Land and Water Conservation Fund is now the requirement to comply with the Build America, Buy America Act, or BABA. This is part of the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed last year. And it concerns all construction materials must be manufactured in the United States. And this applies to iron, steel, manufactured products, and construction materials used in the project. It also means that the cost of manufactured components must be greater than 55% of the total cost of all components, and only applies to articles, materials, and supplies that are consumed, incorporated into, or affixed to an infrastructure project permanently. So things like furniture or scaffolding or tools used to build your project, like hammers, that kind of stuff. Things that can walk away are not required to comply with BABA. Screws, nails, to build your project are required to comply with BABA. They are going down to that level of detail. So I apologize in advance, because this will be fun to comply with.
It's brand new, and we've never had to comply with this for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So we're working through the impact that this is going to have,
And how to successfully document the implementation.
right? And the Department of the Interior, which is, where the National Park Service is housed, is trying to get a waiver for the Land and Water Conservation Fund program. So right now, we don't have one, but there's a potential.
Mhm.
And it may just be for projects under a certain cost. So
Mhm.
until we, know more, right now we have to comply.
Correct. There is the potential outside of that, the waivers that Janice discussed, there is the potential for waivers, to be submitted directly to the Park Service for review. And there's 3 different types that we can work through. There, is a non-availability waiver, meaning that the type of iron, steel, or manufactured product or construction material are not produced in the United States in either sufficient quantity, or they are not reasonably available or of satisfactory quality for your proposed project. That is one possible waiver. You can also do an unreasonable cost waiver. So meaning the inclusion of iron, steel, or manufactured products or construction materials produced in the US will increase the cost of the overall project by more than 25%. Or you can do a public interest waiver, which would be applying the domestic content procurement preference would be inconsistent with the public interest because of X, right? Again, we can submit those waivers. I haven't had one submitted to me yet, so I don't know what they look like and what kind of requirements we need to do to get through those. They are optional. I don't know how quickly they will move. I do not know how likely they are to be approved. So just be aware. Okay, because BABA is a big bone of contention. Anybody have any questions at this point? Okey dokey. So we're gonna move on to reimbursements. So, LWCF is a reimbursable grant, meaning that you will put forth all funding and then we will reimburse you up to 50%. This is also a matching grant, meaning that you have to match with either state and local funds, private donations, in-kind match, up to 50% of the project. So, for example, if you request $500,000 and are awarded $500,000, you will have to match the project at $500,000. So be prepared to document that. You can request your reimbursement as needed. I have projects that request once a month, once a quarter, and then I have some projects that don't request until the project is absolutely completed and they just get a lump sum. So it's totally up to what you guys need and how it works best for you. But you can do any submission via web grants in our claims section. Reimbursements must be for activities that are contained within the project period of performance that are eligible costs. Because this is federal funding, detailed supporting documentation is required, and that requirement goes for both the amount that you're requesting reimbursement for, as well as the match that you're claiming, because I have to be able to verify your match. So detailed supporting documentation includes things for examples of like timesheets and direct labor. I'm gonna need to see that you got paid if you are a staff member, and I'm gonna need to see a copy of your timesheet to make sure that you're meeting all time and effort requirements for Title II and ensuring that everything is going smoothly. So examples of this are not gonna work because my link is broken. Cool beans. I can send you examples, and our examples are available on our website. Other examples for grant-related expenses that are eligible are things like travel and mileage that are related to the grant project. Again, things like that must go for your standard GSA rates. Anything outside will not be reimbursable. Match. Again, LWCF is a matching required grant. It is again a 50-50 match. So again, if you have $500,000 of federal funding, then you will have to match at $500,000 in either cash in kind funding. Federal funds may not be used as match unless they are specifically authorized in the funding's legislation. So examples that are eligible of federal funding to match LWCF are small, but they are there. Recreational Trails Program dollars, RTP, can match LWCF. Community Development Block Grant funds can match LWCF, and ARPA can also match LWCF. So just be aware. Again, eligible match includes things like cash, donated funds, value of property, donated labor, equipment, materials, pre-award costs, things like that. Again, your match is you're gonna have to do some pretty intense documentation so that I can credit you with the match that you're claiming. And again, it has to be directly related to the project and within the project period of performance, which are going to be identified in your executed funding agreement. So when you are going for volunteer labor, you can use the volunteer labor rate, which is found at the independent sector, which is fair market value, which I believe right now is at $29.95 an hour. So that can help move your grant up pretty quickly. Again, the match supporting documentation has to be the same level of documentation that you would do if you were submitting for request for reimbursement. Again, you can use planning activities up to 3 years prior, as long as it has been approved by the Park Service in advance. And again, things like travel, mileage, vehicle usage, you have to use either the state mileage rate or GSA rate. So with subcontracts, because we are now, again, we are trying to comply with Title II, CFR 200, we have to ensure that subcontracts are executed properly. So we will, once you get to the point of having an executed funding agreement, and once you get to the point where you have to go out to contract, We need to see copies of all executed contracts that include things like your Nevada business license, active certificates of insurance, et cetera, before we can let you move forward to make sure that we are compliant and that you are compliant. Please be prepared to provide copies of invoices and backup documentation for reimbursement claims with your subcontractors, if that's how you're gonna do this project. And please use best practices for selecting a subcontractor, including things like checking to make sure that they're not suspended or debarred, they have active licenses, they have active and real insurance, things like that. Please be prepared to contact us with any questions, because again, this is something that we're just starting to really work on. Amendments. Amendments to our executed funding agreements have to be approved, whether it's a scope of work change, a budget increase, a budget decrease, or a time extension. All of that has to be submitted via us at NDSP, and then we have to submit that to the National Park Service on your behalf for their review and approval. Amendments requests have to include a justification letter explaining the request for the change, again, whether it's a change to your scope of work, budget increase or decrease, and or an increase or a request for time extension. You have to have an updated description and notification form. You have to update your budget and narrative. You have to submit an updated A&R form, and there also may be updated maps and things like that, depending on, and updated budgets, depending on what type of amendment you're requesting to do. Again, everything has to be done through us first. So if you are, once you get to the point and your project moves forward and say, you know, you go out to bid and somehow your project has increased by $1 million, because that happens, and your budget is no longer sufficient and you need to request an increase. If we have the funding and it's viable, we will make that request on your behalf to the Park Service, and then I will help you go through all of those forms and get everything we need so that we can then submit it for you to get your potential amendment. LWCF has quarterly programming requirements. So we require progress reports every quarter. So they are going to be due January 10th, April 10th, July 10th, and October 10th. Hopefully that's pretty easy to remember, but if it's also listed on the website at webgrants.com. So if you have questions, please don't hesitate to check either WebGrants or contact me. All progress reports need to be submitted via WebGrants in the status report section. Please make sure in your reporting that you would link your reports to your program deliverables and provide pictures and an explanation of how the project has moved forward since the last progress report. Grantees that do not submit a progress report and also submit a reimbursement request will not have their reimbursement request processed without an update on how your project is moving forward. Another thing that's required per Title II, specifically Title II CFR 200-332, is project monitoring. Anytime there's federal funding involved, it is the responsibility of the federal entity or the pass-through entity, i.e. Nevada Division of State Parks in this instance, to do monitoring of your subrecipients and all the funding that goes out. This includes both financial and performance monitoring. This will include on-site and desk reviews and we will also be verifying single audit status for any of those entities that expend more than $750,000 in federal funding cumulatively over the course of a year. We will be doing that both either via the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, or if I can't find you on the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, which is a requirement that must be submitted 9 months after your fiscal year ends. If I can't find it, then I will be coming to you and asking you why I can't find it. Any audits that come up on the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, I will be checking for deficiencies or corrective action plans, and I will also be checking to see if those corrective action plans or deficiencies have been reviewed and corrected. If not, I will be asking why. Written confirmation from you to address any findings related to those single audits and or my monitoring will also be required. For the moment, this is something that is going to just be on your radar, because at this point in time, it's me. I can't get to you, sorry. I have every intention of getting to this, but we're hiring somebody, I swear we're hiring people, but I need more time. So this is something that's coming on the radar. So don't be surprised if it comes eventually. One of the other things that has to occur when you have LWCF funding and when your project is completed, all projects have to include some form of permanent public acknowledgement of the LWCF assistance that was received. That must include a permanent installation that uses this symbol. Project signs have to be at facility entrances and any other appropriate on-site locations related to the project. LWCF acknowledgement is also encouraged on documents and interpretive materials like flyers, newsletters, or folders related to the project but are not required. LWCF signage will be checked during compliance inspections and you will be notified if I can't find it. Another example of a pretty LWCF sign. See, very small, very simple, must be there.
Oh, one thing on this, if you don't want to do a separate sign, sometimes there's like dedication plaques. You could put the logo on the plaque. Sometimes people do it in bronze, so it looks really.
It looks really nice,
So-
yeah.
So there's other ways to do it besides just putting a sign up.
So, but if you have questions on how the signage needs to, you know, if you want to verify that the signage will be acceptable or not, just let me know and I can walk you through. And finally, project closeout and post-completion inspection of your project. This is at the very tail end, okay? So, in WebGrants, you're gonna submit your final progress report. Your project's completed, everything's happy, woohoo! Complete your final progress report in WebGrants. You're gonna let me know that your project is completed. At some point, hopefully quickly after you let me know, we'll go out and perform a post-inspection and completion report so that I can verify that your project has been completed, take photos, things like that. I will also need a copy of your executed deed restriction on your project area before I can move forward with closing out your project. Once those three things happen, then you will be able to submit your final claim for your project via WebGrants. I will go in and verify your reimbursement request. I will verify your match amount being claimed is correct, and I will process it. Once that happens, then I will work, then basically you guys will be ready to go and your project will be completed. Then on my end, I will work with the National Park Service to fully close out your award. Once properties have been acquired and developed with LWCF assistance, they must be available for inspection by either Division of State Parks or Park Service representatives at any time with appropriate notice. The state is also required to inspect these projects every 5 years after the final billing and then every 5 years thereafter in perpetuity. So I will be visiting often until I retire. So be prepared. And then somebody else behind me will come and do the inspections for me because I'll be retired and please don't take this wrong, but I won't care. So I'll be retired.
You'll be enjoying them.
Yeah, I'll be enjoying the parks because I'll be retired. But that's 20 years away, so nobody has to worry about that right now. So that is the presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Because I threw a ton of information at you. Hi, Madison. What is your question?
Hi, I'm so sorry. I had to step away from my desk for about 5 minutes, so it's possible I missed it. And it was right around the slide that you talked about eligible projects. So when looking through the manuals, I saw, I believe a couple of former projects were kind of in the realm of swimming projects. Do splash pads qualify under this project plan?
Yes, we have done multiple splash pads in the past. So yes, that's a great project.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. Great question. Any other questions? Wow, did I do that good?
It was very well.
Okay.
This is Madison. Just thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this. This was really helpful. Even though I've looked at the stuff on the internet or on your webpage, this was really informative. So I appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely, anytime. I see Winnemucca has a question.
Yeah, so I was kind of wondering with the whole reimbursement and submitting for those, are we able to do that at any point of time during the project, or are there certain
Yeah.
times where they have to be completed, or can we do it before a certain project is completed?
No, you can do it anytime you have the need for your project. Once you have an executed funding agreement and you start moving forward, you can submit for a reimbursement.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so so I want to thank everyone for coming today. I want to let you guys know that this presentation will be up and available on both our web grants portal in the announcements section, and it will also be available on our Nevada Division of State Parks LWCF grant page. Hopefully sometime today, if I can get my button here. And then if you have any questions or would like, individual training in web grants or questions with the particular application that were for your project, I am always available. My contact information is up on the screen. You can email me, you can call me, and I will get back to you as soon as humanly able. And I'm more than happy to do private individual web grants trainings regarding this as well. So no question is a bad question. Please ask anything you want, and I will, if I don't have an answer, which is extremely possible, I will go figure it out.
And then if you can't get a hold of Elise, you are always welcome to contact me also. So we are both
available. Little slammed, but both available. We will get back to you.
And I just want to say thanks, Elise, and everybody else for being in contact with me. I know I've been having some questions, so this presentation was wonderful and it really helped me. Thank you.
Good, I'm very, very glad. Okay, I mean, because I've got 54 more minutes set aside if you guys have any other questions.
Oh my gosh. Wow. It was very long.
I went quick. I talk fast. Okay, well, since I don't see any other questions, again, you guys have my contact information. Please don't hesitate. And I will talk to you guys, I'm sure, at some point soon. Also, this presentation will be given again in some version on the 28th at, I believe, 9:30 a.m. if you are so inclined to join again. Thank you so much, everyone, and I appreciate you being interested in the Land and Water Conservation Fund program, and I hope to see applications soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, no, that's
That was a lot, but yeah. Yeah, it was very well organized.